Okay, we're going to try this again because I just went through several minutes of talking this out, starting this stream up, and not even having my microphone on. I guess it happens. So anyway, welcome to Secret Squirrel Games. Tonight we're going to be creating some pre-generated characters. We're going to be pre-generating, basically, in other words, characters for an upcoming D&D adventure that I intend to be hosting and game mastering for some family members initially, and then eventually down the road I plan on using this and this little bank of pre-generated characters that we're going to create for teaching some folks who might be interested in learning Dungeons & Dragons, especially learning it online, and teaching them some of the basics on how to play the game. So first off, to that end, let me go over a couple of very, very basics in case you're unfamiliar with Dungeons and Dragons and you don't know what we're talking about here. Well, I mean, you may know about the game, but you don't know exactly how I'm doing this type of thing or whatever. The way this works is this is what's called a virtual tabletop. This over here is a screen capture from a program called Roll20, no spaces, ROLL20. .net, and it is what they call a BTT, a virtual tabletop. It allows you to use this grid pattern here, for example, and make maps or import maps or draw maps, do whatever you want to do with there, and have a game. And then you have little counters and stuff, which are like tokens, like little circular things, for example. Here, I'll show you real quick, just so you know what I'm talking about. Oops. Like this guy, all right, which I can zoom in on, for example, and show that it's this guy and this, with this outline here. I'll put some statistics in these boxes here so we can keep track of how much life the person has, what their armor class is, things like that or whatever. But the point is, I would move this guy around the map. I could just would use the arrow keys and just move them around on a map if there was a map drawn on here, for example. And then, he might face off against another token that represents a monster and things like that, right? Okay, and then we'll live out our fantasy battles here, basically, or whatever, with these tokens and such. Now, the token that I just dragged onto the map there represents this character sheet. This character sheet, this is how you keep track of your statistics for game purposes so that the game knows how to adjudicate the results of events and activities within the game. So you sit there and you say, I want to do X. Well, how does it know how to calculate whether or not you can do that? Well, it's based on the numbers that appear on the character sheet. You have a score for your strength, a score for your dex, a score for dexterity, a score for your constitution. So those, for example, represent, I want to bust down this door. Well, that might be a strength check, and here's what your score is, and then here's a modifier that gets added to a dice roll, essentially, if you're playing this game or the traditional way around a table with pencil and paper and your friends, whether it's at a game store or at a friend's house or whatever it is. Now, in virtual tabletop, in this day and age of telecommuting and everything being virtually done, these things have really taken off. Roll20 and several other websites that do the same kind of thing and allow you to play these games with multiple people over the internet in this format have really, really taken off in popularity. But because of it, it's also opened the door to a hobby. That and quarantine, having a lot of time at home, has opened the door to this hobby for a lot of folks, who may have heard of the game and had interest in it, but never really knew anything about it, and they don't know how to get into it or anything like that. I can tell you right now that you could basically log into Roll20 and, if not be playing what they call basically a pop-up game, or a game that somebody's just starting for brand new players as what they call a one-shot, basically, where you're just going to do one scenario and then be done, over the course of a couple hours or so. If not for that alone, you might at least would at least have the option of going into Roll20, searching for a game, finding a game, sending a little message to whoever's running that game and say, hey, I'm interested in the game, and probably getting an invite and being able to play within a week or two. Have a night of a session of playing the game. However, a lot of folks might be interested in doing that, but still have zero knowledge of the game itself. And that's understandable. It's a big hobby. There's a lot of factors involved in the hobby as far as a lot of books, a lot of supplements, there's a lot of institutional knowledge of the game that's out there that a lot of folks have, and some folks tend to be gatekeepers with that knowledge, and they don't, they want to lord that over other people, but other people are more than willing to talk about it, and introduce new people to the game. That's my intent with this that I am setting up here. I'm going to start with my family, kind of. I have, I've got plenty of friends that play already, don't get me wrong, but I'm setting this up specifically because I have a couple of young nephews and a niece, and a couple of siblings or step-siblings who, or siblings-in-law or whatever, who are kind of interested as well. I do have, another sibling that does play, though, so I'm not the only one, but others are interested in trying it out as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it easy on them, and have, just as I would with anybody else who was new to the game, and as I am kind of alluded to, my intent with this is that after I play with my family, I'm going to use this same setup for folks who would like to learn the game and kind of get new into the, get their, cut their teeth on the game, kind of, so what I'm going to do, one of the first steps in order to make it easy on them is to get them to learn the mechanics of the game without having to worry about the mechanics of character generation. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with having pre-generated characters. This is nothing new. Role-playing games like this have done this forever. They'll start with pre-generated characters, so you can just get right into the action and kind of learn as you go along, and then you'll figure things out, and then you can get into character generation learning and stuff later on. Well, Dungeons & Dragons is the same thing, okay? So what Dungeons & Dragons has done, in fact, is they have a starter set that's a real simplified version of the rules, and it comes with five pre-generated characters in it for the little sample adventure that it has with the starter set. And this is what those 5 pre-generated characters are. Right down here, default pre-gen PC templates. I know it sounds very convoluted, but that's what they are. Those are the default ones that come with the game. Now, it does not specify gender for the characters. It's just, it does specify their race because that's important in the game, in the sense that you have different benefits from certain races. So, like, some races can see in the dark and things like that. And it also represents what class they are. Your class is like your job, your role, your specialty, whatever you want to call it. It's some advanced training and learning that you have in regards to a particular job specialty. So if you're a fighter, then that's what you've learned. You learned martial skills in order to be able to do either melee fighting or ranged fighting, to a much better degree than the average person. If you're a rogue, which is like a thief and stuff like that, then you're used to sneaking around. You have skills for breaking into places, picking locks, and disarming traps, and you're stealthier and things like that usually. If you're a cleric, then you're a priest, so you are the representative of your deity that you worship, and you are granted magical powers from your deity in order to, help proselytize, technically, although rarely does anybody ever do that in D&D. No, nobody's ever actually playing their cleric as if they're an actual priest, doing what the number one job of priests and clerics would be, which is to proselytize, to gain followers for and devoted for their deity. But nobody ever does that. Usually, depending on what type of cleric they have, and what I mean by what type is, depending on what god they worship or represent. Then depending on what type of cleric they are, then they may be a cleric of the god of war, in which case, of course, they want to be a fighter, basically, except for have some clerical abilities as well. If they want to be a cleric of the god of life and preservation and things like that, and healing is what they're going to be. They're going to basically be a healer. They're going to be able to bring the dead back to living, and they're going to heal wounds on people and things like that, in their party. The default character, pre-generated character that comes with the game system is what they call a cleric, a life cleric, which is exactly that. They're dedicated healers for the most part. And then the default system also has a wizard, because what would a fantasy system be without magic other than just deity magic? We're talking like wizards, like Gandalf type stuff. Now, there are other types of what they call arcane spellcasters in D&D. There are sorcerers and warlocks and even bards and such. But we're not going to get into those. The default system, the standard setup starter set for D&D, doesn't come with those. It only comes with those 5 that are listed right there: wizard, cleric, 2 fighters, and a rogue. So we're not going to get more in-depth than cleric and wizard in regards to the magical side of the game system. Okay, now like I said, it doesn't specify gender on the default characters, because that doesn't make a difference in the game system. So what I've done is I have recreated these. I kept these here in their original form, I guess you could say. I mean, I imported them word for word basically into this game system, this Roll20 game system here first, and then I kept them here so that I have them as a reference, to be able to draw on. I can always copy them and make them something that's accessible by the players, and that's basically what I did. For example, what I am allowing for my family at first, and then for also the folks that I will be trying to open up my tutorial sessions to at a later point. What I intend for them is those same 4 classes: clerics, fighters, rogues, and wizards, but I am also adding one more from the player's handbook, which is the main guide of all the character creation process, definitely, as well as a lot of the rules for the game. I'm adding barbarians, because while there are other classes also available in the player's handbook, there's rangers and there's druids and there's, like I said, warlocks and sorcerers and bards and paladins and monks. Some of those get a little trickier as far as how to learn their processes, so I'm not going to confuse somebody into with the nuances of those other classes. All I'm going to deal with really is the basic stuff, which are these 4 classes here: clerics, fighters, rogues, and wizards. Those are the things that the game creators have even deemed easy enough to learn that they allow them in the starter set. But then, like I said, I'm going to throw in barbarians, because they're nothing complicated to learn. They're really easy. I mean, it's just, where's the enemy? Go crush, blah, 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 whatever. They're really easy to learn too. So I am throwing in barbarians as an option for my tutorial players, whether they be my family or other folks later on when I start to put all this together for and open the doors up, for folks who might want to learn the game. So that being said, I wanted to give my family first, and then these other folks later on, lots of options for their pre-generated characters. So you see these aren't the actual character sheets. These are like little folders here: barbarians, clerics, fighters, rogues, and wizards here. These are characters that I've already created or need to create. So under barbarians, I do have 2 options: a human and a dwarf option, and I have 2 character sheets for each. I have a male and a female character sheet. I already said that there's no difference between the genders, so you might be wondering, well, then why did you make gender-specific character sheets? And that's because I've gone ahead and for the sake of making it easier for people, I've gone ahead and this game uses tokens on the map, and basically eventually you got to come down to an image for your character. You know, there has to be a picture, and I don't want to have to do that at the time that somebody decides they're going to play this, you know, this barbarian, because these are the exact same character sheets. Barbarian 1 human male and Barbarian 1 human female. Exact same character sheets. No difference other than the name being male and female, and one other thing, which is the fact that they have, see, exactly the same character sheets as far as their stats, except for one thing. When you go to the bio and info page, there is a picture of a male or there is a picture of a female. And as a result, there are also tokens that you use on this online mapping here of a male and a female. So, you know, I didn't want to have to go through that trouble at a later point when I was displaying these and giving these options for future players who want to learn the game to sit there and go, okay, I want to play this barbarian, and they go, but I want to be a female, or I want to be a male, and now I've got to have pictures ready for male and female and then put it on that character sheet and adjust it. Well, I don't want to do that. What I want to do instead is already have them set with both their options. If they say, ooh, I like the look of this male barbarian, I want to play that guy. Okay, fine. Already done. Here's your character sheet. Already set. So, like I said, those ones are already done. Any of the ones that already have pictures on them are already done. So, there's a dwarf male right here, barbarian, and a dwarf female right there, barbarian. And then, so I've got those two options for barbarians. For clerics, I have the default, the one that comes with the starter set, is a dwarf, a hill dwarf life cleric. So I have both a male for that and a female for that. Both, you know, I've gone to the trouble of making sure that the weapons and the gear basically match up. It's not always possible, but I've tried my best. I'm going to skip fighters because I'm going to come back to it. Rogues as well because I'm going to come back to it. But wizards are done. Wizard, here's the default. I've made a male and a female elven wizard. And then I've already gone ahead and that was the default, the elf one. But then I've also created a male and female human wizard as well. Already done. Those are done. Okay. What I have left to do are some fighters and a couple of rogues. Now the default rogue is this halfling, male and female. I've already done them. And the default fighters are done as well, the ones that came with the starter set. And that's a human with a great axe, male and female, and then a human with a bow, male and female. Okay, so those are done. Those are all the ones that represent the default characters that come with the starter set. Okay, the standard pre-generated characters. All these ones that still have little blue symbols next to them, little blue silhouettes next to them, those are ones that still need to be completed in order for me to have all the selections that I want to have available for any future tutorial players, whether they be my family coming up here or just other folks on Roll20 at a later time. So that's what we're going to work on tonight is, what, 5 fighters and 2 rogues, right? No big deal. Again, these are standard pre-generated characters. I'm not going to make them too complicated. I'm going to kind of go along some of the basic tropes a little bit. So, like, for example, human fighter, we already had a great axe fighter, a male and a female that were used. Their primary thing was just coming in strong with a 2-handed weapon, and you know, a great axe in that case, and that's already evident in the pictures, right? So for human fighter 2 here, it's a human male. It's going to be what we refer to as a sword and board type. So that's going to be sword and shield, all right, or one-handed weapon and shield. It can be an axe, it could be a mace, it could be a warhammer, whatever, and shield. But we'll probably make it sword. In fact, when I say we'll probably make it sword, I mean I already have the pictures. So, for example, let me tell you, it's going to be sword and shield for both of them, okay? I have the male and the female already. I have their pictures and I have their tokens. We'll be adding those to the sheets after the sheet is done, after the NPC, or not NPC, the pre-generated player character is already completed. The reason I don't already have female character sheets on here, though, is because since there's no statistical difference, I'm going to make one character sheet, which is blank right now. I will make it, completely fill it out, then I will duplicate the sheet and just change the word male everywhere that's on there, the couple of places that are on there, to female. That's it. And then I'll already have both made. But that way I don't have two blank sheets that I have to completely fill in and hope that I didn't miss anything and it's all the same and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go to that rigmarole. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do one character sheet, finish it completely, save it, whatever, duplicate it, and then change the other one to female, for example. You know, and that way, then I'll go through and put the pictures on each one. Easy enough, right? Okay, so what we're going to do, I know I'm not showing the player's handbooks, but I do have the player's handbooks on another screen over here. So I've got my Roll20 over here, and I've got the player's handbooks over here. So if you see me doing this a lot or whatever, that's what it is. And the intent is to go through the player's handbook and walk through each step of this pretty quickly, pretty easily. It's not too complicated doing first level characters. They're not very complicated at all. Especially something like this, where this first guy is a human. There's not really hardly any racial adjustments. If you do have access to the player's handbook, PDF or physical copy, whatever, I will advise where the information is that I'm looking at as I look at things, but I'm not going to actually show the player's handbook on the screen. I hope that's not too much of a problem. It doesn't cause anybody any real heartache. So what we're going to do, I kind of go out of order. I will admit that when I make my characters, especially pre-generated characters, because I already know the process. So I don't have to read from the beginning and go in the order that the books present the information. Because what it does in the game books, is it has your race information up front, and then it moves on to class, which is fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, those are very important, and then it moves on to background. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. First off, your background is your background, meaning it came before your current time anyway, so I don't understand why they don't do background before doing your class. Secondly, there are things that you might get from your background or in your background that would affect your choices when you're making your character and having to choose certain things from their class, like their skills. So looking on the character sheet over here on the main screen, you can see, let me make sure first off that I'm not cutting it off. Okay, so I'm cutting off part of it. No problem. Okay, so I'll move it over here. So you can see this box here is full of all the skills that you can acquire in the game. You get a couple of those from your background. So you also get a couple of those, at least a couple of those, from your class. Sometimes, depending on what background you choose, you may have overlap. You may have like, oh, okay, well, you can get athletics and survival from this, from the Outlander background, for example, and then you can go, oh, okay, but I'm a barbarian. Athletics and survival are both options for me to get from my class. Therefore, I'm going to, since I'm getting those from my background, I'm going to get a couple other things from my options from my class. So what I'm talking about with that, for example, is barbarian per se. more specifically, is barbarian. When you make a barbarian character, which, like I said, you go race and then you go class right away. Well, when you're making your barbarian, it says for skills you choose 2 from animal handling, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, and survival. Okay, you choose 2 from those skills. Well, if you choose athletics and survival now, and then you choose your background after your class, and you say, well, you know what, Outlander sounds like, the Outlander background's like somebody who wanders off into, into distant remote realms and all this kind of stuff, and you go, oh yeah, that sounds like my dude right there, or whatever. You go, okay, I'm taking that. And it says, well, you get athletics and survival as your skill. Okay, that's not a bad thing, because it does specify in the background area that if you get a skill in background that you already have, then you can just pick any other skill. So that's kind of cool in that sense. It basically opens the door for any skill in that sense. But it also seems like, well, that's kind of a roundabout way of giving you access to other skills. Why didn't they just let you choose your background first? You would already have athletics, survival. You would come to barbarian and you'd go, well, I already have athletics and survival, so basically I'm choosing animal handling, intimidation, nature, or perception. Which, yes, that's more restrictive, but at least that is keeping you kind of in line with what your character type that you developed is. An Outlander who's a barbarian, there's no reason for that person to have sleight of hand skill necessarily, per se, or arcana knowledge, knowledge about all this magical stuff or whatever. And it's like, okay, explain that. But the other way around, where you pick your class first and then you pick your background, and then because you took athletics and survival as a barbarian, and then you got to your backgrounds and you read through them and you go, oh, okay, I'm going to take Outlander. Well, you end up with athletics and survival, and then you go, well, that means I really have 2 skills I can do anything I want with now instead. Well, I'm going to pick Arcana, and I'm going to pick Medicine, and somebody might go, well, that doesn't make any damn sense, because not everything's going to make sense. I understand, obviously, you could sit there and say, well, just don't pick stuff that didn't make sense. True enough, whatever. I mean, maybe I'm just beating my head against a brick wall here, but it just seems kind of like an odd way that you would pick your background after your job, when you could just pick your background and then your job. Anyway, okay, so first, because like I said, this is going to be a human, and it's going to be a sword and board type of character. So as a human, humans are real easy to make. All right, racially, there's no real benefit, like as far as features that they get, other than getting attribute bonuses. Meaning they get bonuses to your statistics over here: your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. But they don't get anything else really. They do get common language and 1 extra language of their choice, and that's it. And that's the other thing. For those who know, yes, there are variant humans as well in the game. I'm not doing that. That's too much, to add in there for a tutorial type of situation like this is intended to be. But then, whereas most races get what humans do get, like I said, as far as attribute bonuses, whereas most races only get like a +2 to one and a +1 to another, for example, humans get a +1 across the board. All 6 of them, they get a +1 on, which is pretty good. I mean, getting +6 attribute points is, pretty significant. But that, by the way, is represented on. Of course, I gotta have an issue with the screen here. Oh, there it is. Page 31 of the Player's Handbook, if you have one and you want to follow along. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep in mind, so that when we assign our attribute points here, which we'll do in just a little bit. I know, again, I'm not going in order 100%, because I like to look at, I'm not trying to min-max, as they say. I'm not trying to make a power character, or whatever type of thing, but I still want it to be relatively, pretty viable, not just randomized or anything like that. So, so I don't go ahead and just assign the numbers and then start looking at the character generation from there on. But the game, of course, does, so initially. So what we're going to do first is just to get the bookkeeping out of the way, is I'm going to go ahead and put my 2 languages on here, because it starts with common and 1 other. So for my other language, this is a fighter. Let's say he knows because this is the male, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever. He or she, because it won't matter, it's going to be a copy of the same character, knows the language of an enemy. So they know orc. In addition, they can speak the language of the orc. Now, like I said, they're going to get 1 bonus ability score, or 1 bonus point to all of their ability scores when I go to assign those points in a moment. I'm using the standard array, since these are pre-generated characters, and what that means is, instead of rolling for my attribute points or even using point score or point buy system, I'm using a standard set of numbers that they have in the game book, in the player's handbook on page why does it not want to show me page numbers? There you go, page 13. There is a standard array, as they call it, which is an 8, a 10, then a 12, 13, 14, and 15. So that's what we're going to be using. This is a fighter, and this is a sword and board fighter in heavy armor, so they're not going to be dexterity based necessarily. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at strength and constitution as our primary things. All right, our primary 2 statistics for this character. Strength for your offensive power, and constitution not for your defensive power, in as much as you're reducing your ability to be hit, or your chance of being hit, but your defensive power in as much as your ability to withstand damage. So strength and constitution are definitely our best bets for our top 2 scores. So that would be our 15 and our 14, which, as you recall, we get a +1 on all stats as being humans. Those will become a 15 and a 16. So that's good to know. Now, aside from that, we're still going to have an 8, a 10, a 12, and a 13. All right. So, do we want this character to be more charismatic? Do we want this character to be a little smarter? Do we want this character to be wise, or even dexterous? All of those things are beneficial at different times, of course. Fighters, dexterity tends to be a thing that they need to be cognizant of, even if they're wearing heavy armor, so that they're not getting... If you're wearing lighter or medium armor, you get benefit to your armor class, or your ability to not be hit based on dexterity. But if you're wearing heavy armor, you don't get that. However, what you still do get a benefit of is this box right here is your saving throws, and there are going to be effects that are going to come at you. Poisons you're gonna make a Constitution save. You're gonna, dexterity save is anything you can try to avoid. So a trap, triggers and it shoots something at you, and you can make a dexterity save to avoid it. Well, that might be something a fighter ends up doing, since they might be up front, because they're going to be a little tougher, and they're going to be trying to be a front line, especially somebody like this. They're not a ranged fighter. They're going to be a sword and shield type of fighter. They're going to be up front. They might trigger a trap, and dexterity could be useful in that sense, even though that it doesn't help them with their armor class, for example. Well, a couple of things are going to fill out automatically if we do a couple of steps on the character sheet too. This step at least. Class, right here at the top of the character sheet. What we're going to do is we're going to choose fighter. And you see what happened? It put a 1 here, saying that we have 1 hit dice, and that it's a D10 hit dice. It's a 10-sided dice. That's how many hit points that we start off with, or what kind of a hit dice that we start off with, what kind of dice. Now, at first level, you start off with maximum hit dice. Therefore, that D10 translates into 10. Now, That's going to be modified by our Constitution modifier here, and that's going to represent how many hit points we have in total. It's going to be the 10 plus the modifier. You see that the character sheet has a default of 10 in all of these statistics already, with a modifier of 0 currently, because that's what the modifier is for a 10 score. The scores range typically from 3 to 18 or whatever for a player character in general. There are other creatures who have bonuses beyond that. Later on with magic items, player characters can have bonuses beyond 18 as well. But giants and stuff like that are stronger than an 18, for example. So these modifiers go up for every 2 points in your score here, or down for every 2 points. Below a 10, it'll become a -1. Or actually, for every... I shouldn't say it that way. 8 and 9 would give you a -1 modifier. 6 and 7 would give you a -2 modifier, in other words. 10 and 11 stays with a 0 modifier. 12 and 13, it goes up to a +1 modifier. 14 and 15, it goes to a +2 modifier. That kind of thing. You see what I'm saying? So every 2 points up, it goes up a point as far as the modifier, from 0 to +1 to +2 to +3 to +4. That's an actual modifier to your dice roll that is affected by that statistic. So you see that these 2 checkboxes also popped in here when I chose fighter. That's because as a first level fighter, level 1, as a first level character at all, our proficiency bonus is a 2. That's a bonus that we get across the board to anything that we are considered proficient or skilled in. Fighters are proficient in strength and constitution saving throws. So since I selected fighter, it knew to put those there, and it automatically applied the proficiency bonus of 2 to those saving throws. So if I have to make a saving throw versus, against poison, for example, that's a constitution save, then it's going to automatically, I'm just going to click this hyperlink, basically, text right here, this highlighted text. It's going to make the roll in the game for me, but it's going to be rolling a 20-sided die, and it's going to be adding 2 to it because I am proficient in that. And because I have no other modifier on my constitution at this time. If my constitution goes up and I get a modifier here, that won't get added to this 2 as well, and thus it will get added to the 20-sided die and improve my chances of scoring higher, which is better. Higher is better on rolls. So, we're looking at fighter. We're looking at a sword and board fighter. Like I said, I want my top scores on strength and constitution. So that's going to be your 15 and your 14, which are then going to become 15 and 16 instead of 14 and 15 because of the +1 from human. So, do I want them to be able to take more damage or able to dish out more damage? I'm going to go with, for sword and board, I think I'm going to go with take more damage. I think I'm going to go with take more damage on this guy. Maybe. You know what? No, I'm not. I'm gonna go with dish out more damage. So between the 14 and 15 of the standard array, my top two scores from the standard array that become, like I said, 15 and 16 with the racial bonus, I'm gonna put the 16 on strength, so he dishes out more damage, and I'm gonna put the 15 there on constitution, so he can take more damage. So, but you can see that the modifier is a 3 for strength now and a 2 for constitution. Also, likewise, as you can see, it added the 2 to the constitution saves, and it added the 3 to the strength saves, like I said. So, now we know what our constitution modifier is, 2 points. Like I said, we start with a 10 at first level. We start at maximum hit points for the level, which is a D10 hit die. So we start with 10 hit points. Therefore, with the constitution modifier, our hit point maximum that goes on this line is actually a 12. I can also fill in the speed because Humans have a speed of 30 feet. Currently, I have 0 initiative bonus because I have 0 dexterity bonus. We still have 4 more statistics to spread out over here. One other thing, though, that you'll see is that strength has athletics as a related skill. It draws on strength. Therefore, it already has the strength modifier listed here. Even though I'm not proficient in the skill, otherwise this box would be checked, it does have the 3 from strength there. There are no constitution related skills, so you see none of them have the 2 points from constitution. It says in parentheses after the skill name which attribute that skill is tied to. So what we're going to do here is we've used our top 2 scores, our 14 and our 15 from the standard array, to become a 15 and a 16 since this is human. So we still have 8, 10, 12, and 13. So what else is important to us? I said dexterity is pretty important to us, right? We can put a 13 there, and because of our plus, which a 13 would only give us, see, watch, if a 13, it only gives us a 1 modifier. However, because of our +1 for being human, that actually makes it into a 14, which gives us a 2, which bumps up our dexterity saving throw 2 points also, which could mean the difference between taking damage and not, you know? So we're going to do that. Even though it doesn't help us with heavy armor, we're still going to do that. So that's our 13. That's our next highest score, in other words. So we still have 8, 10, and 12. Of these 3 last remaining attributes here, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, I mean, if you want to be the face of the party and you want to talk to people, then you want a high charisma. You know, if you want to try to deceive people, you want to try to persuade people, you want to try to intimidate even. You want to be an intimidating figure, you want a high charisma. If you want to know stuff, like I want to know ancient history and I want to know about this religious artifact that we found and all this kind of stuff, where you want a high intelligence. And if you want to have instincts and, you know, good common sense kind of skills, then you want to have a high wisdom. Things that where you can kind of discern things, discern information instead of just not knowing it. You know, I don't know, you know, this, but I have a feeling about that, you know, that kind of thing. So that's going to be a high wisdom. So as you can see by the skills that are listed here, medicine, perception, animal handling, you can't see, it's wisdom as well. Survival, those are wisdom. Insight is the ability to like kind of read somebody's intent. You know, I'm reading between the lines, I'm picking up on what they're saying without them saying it, that kind of thing. You know, they're saying flowery things about this person over there, but I can kind of tell that it's strained. They don't really like that person, that kind of thing. So wisdom would be things like that. The important ones that I would talk about there for a fighter, especially a warrior, is perception. That's good. You detect your enemies, ambushes and whatnot. And survival. Those are both good skills that are wisdom related. So I would go with wisdom as my next, as my 12, which becomes a not 113, a 13 because of the human +1. Now the attribute or the modifier, the ability modifier +1 is the same whether it's a 12 or a 13, but it makes a difference later on in your character's progress because you get the ability to add other attribute points to your existing attributes. So like at 4th level, you could choose to put 2 points on your existing attributes. And if this is a 13 and your constitution's a 15, you can put 1 on each, make them an even number, and bump up both modifiers by 1 point each. So this would become a 2, constitution would become a 3, that would affect your hit points, things like that. So you do plan ahead these things, kind of. So that's a 12 used, that's a 13 used, that's a 14 used, and that's a 15 used. That leaves 8 and 10, our 2 lowest scores. So which one you want to be the dump stat? The one that's actually a negative number, because one of them is going to get an 8 as the score. Even with the human +1 bonus, it's going to bump it up to 9. That's going to make it what we call a dump stat, meaning you're actually hurting yourself if you try to use that stat. Basically, you're worse than just average with that stat. I'm going to say that this sword and board figure is not that smart. They're just not book smart. So they're going to take the 9 there, and then they'll do their 10 on charisma, which will bump up to 11. Yeah, because the 8 bumped up to 9 for intelligence. The 10 bumped up to 11 for charisma. So they're average charisma. They're nothing special. So anyway, that gets that part out of the way. We've done the attributes. We've picked the class, and we haven't completed it though because you still pick your skills from it as well. And then we've got to put in the abilities that the class grants you as well. But we've also we already know what we want to do though. We know we want to do a sword and board fighter. So we're going to do that. I can tell you right now, even though these don't take that long, obviously talking through them does take a bit of time. So considering it's already been 45 minutes, I will try to cap this at about an hour, and or maybe a little over. And we're just going to do one character tonight together, and then I'll do others. Probably tomorrow or a little bit more on my time, also, so I don't have as many to do later on. But the intent at this point now is going to be, go ahead and, like I said, I'm going to skip past class, and I'm going to go all the way to the back to the backgrounds. That's what I was trying to, I was drawing a blank for a second. Yeah, I'm going to go to backgrounds after I get this PDF into the right position. All right, so backgrounds. What am I thinking for this sword and board? I'm thinking soldier, honestly. Thinking maybe this person was a military type, you know? So if you look at soldier background in the player's handbook on page 140, you'll see that it has athletics and intimidation. So it's going to give me athletics and intimidation. Again, I can still keep in mind the fact that this part is done after the class. So if I don't want one of those skills, I can pick that skill from my class if it's available in the options for the class, and then I can pick anything else I want basically in place of it. But so it's not that if I don't want one of those skills, it's if I want a different skill that doesn't appear on my class list that I think would be kind of cool for the character, then that's a way to get around doing, get around it where I can do that. But nevertheless, also it gets tool proficiencies, the soldier background. It comes up with one type of gaming set, your choice. I'm going to do a deck of cards. Yeah, playing cards. We'll just call it here. And we'll say we are proficient in it. And a deck of cards is going to be intelligence. Let's say intelligence related by default. I mean, it can be modified later on when you're actually playing, but we're going to say it's intelligence related. And it also comes with land vehicles. So the ability to drive wagons and carts and things like that. And we're going to call that Constitution, I think. Maybe Constitution. Maybe Strength. Maybe Dexterity. Let's do Dexterity. Let's say it's like driving. We'll say it's Dexterity. Okay. For now. I mean, it can always be altered if if the Dungeon Master decides that no, for what you're doing right now, you need to use a different attribute as the base. Well, you can just modify it. But nevertheless. Also, then you get some equipment. So, we're going to come in here and knock in the equipment real quick. You get an insignia of rank. Oops. Insignia. And you get a trophy taken from a fallen enemy, like a dagger or a broken blade or a piece of banner. So, I'll just leave it. Oops. Here, I'll do that. Trophy taken from enemy. There's not a whole lot of room to type there, so I'm just going to leave it at that. You get a set of bone dice or a deck of cards. Now I'm proficient in playing cards, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and they have the SRD, this source reference document, loaded up in Roll20 already. So I'm going to look at items, and it's going to pull up all these items just that's listed in the source reference document. Like I said, there's dice set. I think there's playing cards in here. I'm pretty sure there is. And if so, playing card set. There you go. I'm going to just drag that over here, and it automatically puts it in with its corresponding weight and everything. There's a set of common clothes, so I can just go straight up here and grab common clothes, drag that over, and then you also get a belt pouch containing 10 gold pieces. So I come down to pouch, which is right here, and it contains, there you go, load up, thank you. It contains 10 gold pieces, so we're going to put 10 right here in the gold piece section. This is money. This is copper pieces, silver, electrum, gold, and platinum pieces. So there's 10 gold pieces in there. Now, you determine what your specialty was as a soldier, and I'm going to say that this guy was infantry. He was an infantry soldier. So I'm going to say and he was an infantry sergeant. So he has a feature also that comes with his background. And I'm just going to say infantry sergeant. This comes from background, and we're going to call it soldier. And the way it puts it in the book, what did I say, page 140? Is that what I said? I think so. Oop. Yep, page 140. The way it puts it in the book is you have a military rank from your career as a soldier. Soldier boy. Soldiers loyal to your former military organization still recognize your authority and influence, and they defer to you if they are of a lower rank. You can invoke your rank to exert influence over other soldiers and requisition simple equipment or horses. That's pretty big. For temporary use. You can also usually gain access to friendly. Also usually gain access to friendly military encampments and fortresses. Military encampments and fortresses where your rank is recognized. Where your rank is recognized. There you go. So we've got our military rank, infantry sergeant, listed in there. We hit this hyper whatever and it collapses it. But it's there anytime we want. We just pull it up, boom, done deal. Now, additionally, on the character sheet, there's these 4 boxes right here. Personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. All right. Those are listed under the background sections, under each of the background, in the background section, I should say. So I'm just going to decide between them. I'm not going to bother rolling them. I'm just going to decide between them. I'm going to say that this particular person, for their personality trait, I'm going to go with number 3. Why not? I've lost too many friends, and I'm slow to make new ones. There you go. As far as their ideal is concerned, they have 6 possibilities listed on there, and I'm going to go, oh, well, what alignment should we make this person? First off, let's see what sounds good, because the ideals are tied to some element of their alignment, which is kind of like their moral code. You know, whether they're good or not so good, or whether they obey laws, or they could say to hell with laws. Let's say that this person is, they've seen some combat before, you know, as a soldier, obviously. Not just as I mean, so the difference between fighter and soldier, first off, is that fighter is their profession now as an adventurer. They came from a life of soldiering before. They were an infantry sergeant in the military. Other people could be a fighter now, but have been in a book, you know, type of environment, a library type of environment, been all, you know, cloistered up and studying stuff, and now they're finally out seeking this life of adventure. Still others could have been, you know, I don't know, a merchant, and now they found themselves being a fighter and an adventurer now. So this person, though, had soldiering in their blood from earlier on, and now they've continued on with their life of as a fighter, as an adventurer. That's what they intend to move forward with. So what I'm going to do with them, as far as their ideals are concerned, is I'm going to use, there's kind of a neutral ideal for their background that would be listed as live and let live. Ideals aren't worth killing over or going to war for. So they've seen enough killing. They don't really necessarily want to kill just to kill. So live and let live. Ideals aren't worth killing over or going to war for. And that is a pretty neutral take as far as alignments are concerned on life and death, essentially. It doesn't mean that you have to defend something that based on the laws or orders that are given to you. It's just like, you know what, have a real reason if you're gonna kill. That's this person's take on it. I forgot to mark in here that they are human. And we don't worry about subclass and subrace at this point because they're only first level. Their background, though, I did say was soldier, so that's what we're putting there. And because that's a neutral take for the most part, I'm going to go with them just being neutral good. All right. For a pre-generated character, that's perfectly fine. It makes it easy for a new player to grasp the idea that the character that they're running is basically a good person, despite the fact that they're not necessarily tied down to having to obey orders or not wanting to obey orders, you know, being opposite of that. Welcome to the stream, by the way. If you're if you're tuning in for the first time, say hi. Definitely good to see you, good to have you along. And in fact, give me some feedback if you want. Just working on some pre-generated characters here for some upcoming Dungeons and Dragons tutorials that I plan on putting on. Starting with some family members, and then we're going to move on from there and do kind of some tutorials for new players on Roll20 at some point in the near future. But right now I'm building up a bank of pre-generated characters so that these new players can get in, get their feet wet, learn the game, and not have to worry about obviously creating characters. Currently, I'm doing the background of a sword and board human fighter. It says human male on here only because there's going to be a separate sheet that's going to be identical, but it will say human female. It will have the exact same stats. It's just they're just going to have different pictures on them and different tokens attached to them, so that one's a male and one's a female. But there's no differentiation as far as the statistics are concerned, and it's just going to be there. It's just there for purposes of the imagery that's used, the token and the artwork that will be used for the character themselves. But right now, I'm just making a human fighter, in other words, that is a sword and shield based fighter, and we are on the soldier background currently. So moving on to page 141 of the Player's Handbook is where the bond and the flaw are. The flaw chart and bond chart are. And I'm just going to decide from that, say that, you know what, how about that? We'll go number 5 for the bond, and we'll say, especially since they don't think ideals are worth killing over or going to war for, instead they do think that those who fight beside me are those worth dying for. Yeah, so you know, picture them like Hoot from Black Hawk Down. You know, I've lost too many friends. I'm slow to make new ones. Live and let live. Ideals aren't worth killing over or going to war for. Those who fight beside me are those worth dying for. They said, yeah, they don't understand. People back home, they don't understand. It's about the man next to you. So anyway, now we're going to do a flaw here. The flaw on this one is, we're going to say, but let's go. You know what? Person is so set in their own little personal ideals, and they so against these other issues of fighting for ideals and stuff like that they'd rather eat my armor than admit when I'm wrong. There we go. So they're not going to admit they're wrong very often, that's for sure. Aside from that, we now go back to the class. Now the class of fighter starts on page 70 of the Player's Handbook. The charts and the it's just description in the beginning. But once you get past all that, you start getting into the nitty-gritty of actually making the character on the next page, on page 71. And so we're going to start with some of the basic stuff first. We're going to go ahead and throw in here the proficiencies that it automatically gives you. So all armor and shields, as far as armor types are concerned. So we're going to log those in here. And after that, we go into weapons, and fighters are pretty skilled with weapons, so they learn simple and martial weapons, which pretty much covers all the weapons for the most part. I mean, I haven't seen anybody really do anything in this version, in 5th edition version, that they used to have in, like they used to have in some of the earlier versions where you had exotic weapons as options also, that you might find a weapon that didn't qualify as either simple or martial, but it was special skill that was required just to learn that one. I haven't seen that in 5th edition. I haven't seen that referenced anywhere. So other than that, though, we've already got our saving throws. Just by choosing fighter, it automatically selected strength and constitution, so that's already checked for us. We already have our hit points. We know that we start with 10 plus our constitution modifier, so we ended up with 12. And then we go into the skills options, which are on the next page in the Player's Handbook. And the skill list for choices for fighters are acrobatics, animal handling, Here, let me show up here. Acrobatics and animal handling, the top two. Athletics, which is we already have from our soldier background. History, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival. Now, intimidation we already have also from our background because I didn't go in the order, the character generation order that's in the book. But we know that those two skills, athletics and intimidation, are already covered, really. So we can choose from any of these others, basically. Acrobatics would do us some good, you know, if you want to jump across a chasm or something like that. You want to maintain your balance as you're trying to cross some like a log bridge or something like that. That can be important. You know, acrobatics can do that, especially considering that, you know, well, I mean, we've got an okay dex. We've got, you know, +2 modifier, but we're going to be in heavy armor with a shield and a sword, you know, all things depending on what the DM says at any point. They may say, oh, you're doing this and you're going to have a negative, or you're going to be at disadvantage to do it because you're, because of your heavy armor. Maybe there's high winds, whatever it is. So acrobatics would be the check that you would make. Currently, because we do have a 14 dex, we already have 2 points in acrobatics, which is not bad, considering that we don't have proficiency in it. But if we took proficiency in it, because of our proficiency bonus of 2, that 2 would go up to a 4. So that would basically double the bonus we would get. That's not too bad. It's one to keep in mind. But we only get 2 from this list, and we already have athletics and intimidation. I don't see this character as an animal handler much. History, no. Insight, not so much. Survival is always good for a warrior. That's not a bad thing to, keep that in mind, definitely. Perception is always good. You spot ambushes and stuff like that. That's always a good thing. And then, so we're basically looking at, because we already have athletics and intimidation, so we're basically looking at either acrobatics, perception, or survival as the skills that we want to get. We get 2 of them. Those are the 3 we've narrowed it down to. Chat, got a suggestion? Which ones should we not get between those 3? Acrobatics, perception, and survival. And these are, again, pre-generated player characters. These are going to be for folks who are learning the game and who want to get their feet wet. Recommendations? Any suggestions? Any choices that you might want to throw in there? If not, then I'm going to just go ahead and pick one. Or pick 2, I should say, of the 3. No? Alright. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and go with perception and acrobatics. Yep, we're going to leave survival off. There you go. And then, let's see. And then we're on to equipment, and then the actual class benefits. The benefits of being a fighter. So, I'm going to go ahead and do the benefits, and then we'll come back to equipment right afterwards. First off, you start with a fighting style. A fighting style is a particular type of fighting that you are better at. Whether it be, I like to fight with 2 weapons, or I like to fight with a 2-handed weapon, or I like to fight, with a bow, so archery style, or I'm better at defending myself versus attacking, or I'm better at getting in there good and getting good damage on somebody. So, since this is a sword and board type of guy, or female, whatever, I'm not going to go with archery as the fighting style for this person, and I'm not going to go with great weapon fighting as the fighting style for this person, where you use a 2-handed weapon, because they need to have the other hand available for their shield. I'm also not going to go with 2-weapon fighting, because again, they need to have their other hand available for their shield. So what I am going to do is look at either defense, which improves your armor class, protection, which allows you to help an ally who's adjacent to you. I don't see that, let's be fair, I don't see that used there very often. A lot of times you don't find yourself necessarily right next to an ally where you can do that, where you can use your shield to go, yeah, all right, here, I'm gonna help this ally next to me not get hit. It's very situational. I mean, it's great when it happens, but it's very situational. So really, I'm down to either defense or dueling. Dueling is as long as you have a weapon in one hand, a melee weapon in one hand, and no other weapon in the other hand, basically, then you gain bonus damage when you hit. So that's an offensive fighting style, basically, versus defense, where the defense fighting style makes it where when you're wearing any kind of armor, you gain an additional +1 to your armor class over and above whatever the armor is. Now, as it is, we're getting 2 more points over and above our armor by carrying a shield. So if our armor gives us a 16 armor class, which we should start with chainmail, that's going to give us a 16 armor class on its own. We're not going to get any bonus from our dexterity because it's heavy armor, so it nullifies any dexterity bonus to our armor class. But we're going to get 2 more points from our shield, so that's going to put us at an 18 armor class. That's pretty good, especially for first level. That's pretty high AC, so that makes it hard to hit you. If we also went defense fighting style, we would instead be at a 19 armor class. And that 1 point of armor class stays as a 1 point bonus even as we progress later on in our character's life, and they get better armor or a magic shield or armor or anything like that, and your armor class starts getting up to 22, 23, 24. Well, that's that number that your armor class is the number that your opponent has to match or beat in order to hit you when they roll their dice and add in their bonuses. So the harder you make it to hit you, obviously the better in that case. That's another way of, you can have a lot of hit points and be able to take a lot of damage, or you could do my preferred method, which is I don't need to have a lot of hit points if you can't hit me, so that being said, critical hits or a natural 20 on a 20-sided dice always hit, so it doesn't matter what your armor class is in that case. So there's always a 5% chance of getting hit regardless. But anyway, I think for this guy though, I think we're going to go with the dueling fighting style and get an extra couple of points of damage in there. So that's a class ability, and he gets that straight from Fighter itself. And the description of that is when you are wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +2 bonus to damage rolls with that weapon. Not bad, right? 2 more points. Hey, at first level, that really makes a difference. Now, as you get higher in level, that's not going to affect so much, a lot, necessarily. But it could. 2 points is 2 points. When you get multiple attacks if you stay fighter and at 5th level, you get to the ability to attack 2 times in a round. That becomes 4 points then. Of course, at 5th level, 4 points isn't as much either, but it is what it is. We'll take it though. So now we have our fighting style. We have another ability that we get at first level as a fighter, and that's called Second Wind. All right, so we're gonna jot that down up in here right quick. That's from class, that's from fighter, and this is the way it's phrased. You have a limited pool, I was going off of memory. Limited well of stamina that you can draw on to protect yourself from harm. On your turn, you can use a bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level. And then once you use this feature, you must finish a short or long rest before you can use it again. So, what does that mean? That now in gameplay, you have everybody is authorized, unless something has specifically limited you or impacted you negatively to reduce your number of available actions. Everybody has one movement action and then one regular action. That regular action could be another movement if you wanted. So what I'm saying by that is your movement is 30 feet for a human, for example. So you can move 30 feet and then you can still perform one regular action. Or you could move 30 feet and your regular action could be to move another 30 feet. That's called the dash action then. That would be the regular action you chose. So you could do that, or you could move and then attack. You could move and cast a spell. You can move all kinds of different stuff. There's all kinds of different options, okay? Additionally, sometimes you are authorized a bonus action, which is you can move, you can perform your regular action, and then you can squeeze in this other quick action, all right? They refer to it as a bonus action. Depending on what your class is, your bonus action options might differ. You know, some spells are bonus actions. Some rogues get some abilities to, like they can hide as a bonus action. And then fighters get the ability, in this case, Second Wind, to use Second Wind as a bonus action. So they can move, they can fight, and then they can just kind of steel themselves for combat, draw on a little bit of extra energy, get that Second Wind, and what it amounts to in game terms is it heals them for 1 to 10 hit points plus 1 hit point per level that they are in fighter. So if they're a 5th level fighter, and then it's 1 to 10 hit points plus 5. So if they rolled a 7, then it's 7 plus 5, 12 hit points they just got back as a bonus action. They healed themselves. It wasn't magical. It was just them finding the grit inside them, you know, and just going, yeah, you're not taking me down, you know, and then they got themselves motivated back up, got into the fight again with a little more vigor again. So that's your Second Wind ability. It's pretty cool. It definitely comes in handy. You get that. There's 2 forms of rest in the game, basically. There's the short rest and the long rest. Long rest is like sleeping overnight. It's like a full 8 hours of rest. And then your short rest, you can take a breather, basically, but it's a little more than a breather, really, because it's an hour still. But you can take an hour, you know, as you travel somewhere or whatever during the course of the day. After you've had a battle and you want to recover some, you can say, hey, you know, we're going to take an hour. Well, you'll get your Second Wind back after that hour as well if you've already used it. So that still comes in handy. It's pretty useful, definitely. All right, so we're at the point now with the character that we have put in all their class abilities. We've chosen their proficiencies, their skills. We've allocated their attribute points, of course. We've put in their armor and weapon proficiencies and languages and everything like that. We've gotten their equipment from their background choice. We've decided their personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws from their background choice. We put in the feature that came from their background choice, the military rank. All we really have left for a fighter, because they don't have spells or anything like that to worry about, is their equipment, which we've already started that a little bit with what we got from their background, like I said. So what we can also look at is the class gives you equipment as well to start with. And that's really all we're going to have to worry about, is what the class gives you at this point, because we're not going to spend their 10 gold. This is a pre-generated character, so we're just going to leave that 10 gold and let the player have that 10 gold to move forward with. We're not trying to tailor the character too much. We're trying to keep it pretty basic so that they can just pick it up and run with it. All right, so as far as their starting equipment for a fighter, it's also on page 170. I'm sorry, not 170, 72. Page 72 of the player's handbook, at the top on the left-hand side. And their starting equipment is going to be, they start with first a suit of chainmail or a suit of leather with a longbow and 20 arrows. I know, right? Look at a whole kit. Rest is extremely important. It is extremely important. It's always important. You got to get your beauty rest. Some more than others, like Naoki. What? And so chainmail. So pseudo chainmail. This is what we're talking about for a sword and board character like this. We want them to have a good high armor class, like I said. Leather armor. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have a +2 dexterity bonus, so that's not too bad, obviously. If they had a lighter armor, they'll still get their dexterity bonus that way. But that was never the intent for this character. This character was to be heavily armored, sword and shield, and of course, right? And welcome to the chat, by the way. And so the intent instead is for this person to be heavily armored. So we're going to give them the chainmail. We're going to go with the chainmail option. So if I scroll up here in the source resource document, source reference document, excuse me, and there it is, chainmail. We pull that in, boom, it's in there. The next option of what it gets for fighter is a martial weapon and a shield, or 2 martial weapons. Well, from the beginning I've said this is a martial weapon and shield option. We're going to go standard. We're going to go long sword, and thanks. I'm creating, all right, so I'm creating pre-generated characters for an upcoming tutorial on the game and introduction to the game for some family members. First off, I've got a niece and a couple of nephews that my brothers would like me to introduce to the game. And then on top of that, I'm making several of these pre-generated characters with the intent that if that goes well with them, then I'm going to actually probably do some tutorials on Roll20 for folks who have heard of the game and don't really know that much about it, or know a little bit but want to know more and would like to, get their feet wet and just some real basic, simple scenarios and kind of something to cut their teeth on, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's excellent. Yes, it's perfect. I mean, now is definitely the right time to do it anyway. I'm sure there's plenty of options out there, of course, but we'd like to thank you for flying with us today. Nevertheless, I have the equipment and I have the situation to do this, so I'm going to try to set some of this stuff up and do some basic Roll20 scenarios. Try, do little one-shots and stuff like that. A lot of folks' only exposure to the game and only opportunity to learn the game has been, or was before at least, Adventure League at game stores or at cons. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they actually had the opportunity at Roll20, they just didn't necessarily know about Roll20, so or things like that, virtual tabletops. So that was their first exposure to it at cons, which is, there's nothing wrong with that part of it, being exposed to it in those environments. The only problem I have with that is the Adventure League part of it. I am not a fan of Adventure League at all. I think it ruins the fun of the game, and so yes, it sucks the fun out of a lot. No, there's nothing to be sorry about. Trust me. You can ask any of the other folks that we know and game with on whether or not on what my viewpoint is on Adventure League, and they can tell you that I've been quite outspoken about the negatives of Adventure League for quite some time. So anyway, for this guy, he needs a shield as well to go, and a martial weapon. I'm just gonna go the thing that nobody hardly uses anymore and used to always be the standard that everybody always had in D&D when I was coming up, and now it's a longsword. No, you never see longsword. Everybody tries to be creative with other things and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, well, what about, sometimes steak and potatoes is just a good meal, There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it'll fill you up. It's good stuff, so you don't need to be It doesn't always need to be something fancy. It can just be steak and potatoes, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do longsword, chainmail, shield. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Adventure League goes beyond the rules. Adventure League has their own rules, which are not D&D rules, you know? So that's what I don't like about it. I think we had this conversation before, actually. I've always viewed Adventure League as the no league, you know? You're trying to encourage people, new players, to play the game and be excited about the game, but every time they ask if they can do this or can do that, Adventure League's only answer is no. It's always, nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. But it says in the book, I know, but no. Oh, okay, but it says in the book, but no. You know? So that kind of defeats the point of trying to teach somebody and encourage somebody to play the game and learn the game and from their marketing aspect, buy the game and all this stuff or whatever. If they walk away from there with an always deflated, you know, defeated attitude, like, well, it's always no, you know, then why would I, you know, if is everybody like that who plays the game? In that case, I don't want to play the game, because it's not just about the game itself. The game could be the best piece of, you know, game mechanic creation out there, but if the players all have this negative attitude or whatever, then you're like, well, then I don't want to play. I don't want to play with those people. You know, it's so... Anyway. Alright, so as far as equipment is concerned, it started with chainmail. We went with the martial weapon and the shield. The next option is a light crossbow and 20 bolts or 2 hand axes. Do we see this person ever shooting a crossbow? Or do we see them being kind of boss with a couple of hand axes, maybe? Yeah, you heard the way I'm leaning. That's right. Hand axes it is. That's the way we're going with this one. Hand axes. They'll probably never use them. They'll probably... It'll be one of those things where they, you know, whoever plays it wishes I had chosen the crossbow. Not hand crossbow, hand axes. But whatever. I don't care. You know what? They're not here, and I'm making the character. So, there you go. And we'll make it 2, please. Thank you very much, hand axes. Shocked about what? That I don't care? I never would have guessed hand axes. I know, right? You never see anybody do that. Everybody always goes for the crossbow. Because it seems like it... Well, it doesn't seem like it. It is more versatile. It provides you more options. Oh, the enemy's all the way across that ravine. Well, at least I have a crossbow. I can still shoot. Whatever. Okay. Man, I only have 2 hand axes. I don't want to throw them over there. Yeah, I know. But, you know, you never know. Maybe the guy goes, you know what? The one good thing about hand axes is they're light weapons. So you go, hey, guess what? Something happened with my longsword. All I have is a crossbow, and I can be a ranged guy, but I'm wearing this heavy armor for a reason. Sure, I can put my shield away, and now I'm 2 hand axe guy, because they're both light weapons. I can dual wield. So it gives an option, you know. And then the last remaining item is either a Dungeoneer's Pack or an Explorer's Pack. Explorer's Pack is the generic. Everybody has the option pretty much of Explorer's Pack, so we're going with Dungeoneer's Pack. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. We're going with Dungeoneer's Pack. And if I go to the equipment section, which is on page 150 area, around that section, then I can pull up, come on, book. There we go. We're looking at 151 for equipment packs. For equipment packs, we are going, like I said, Dungeoneer's Pack, which the listing is in the source reference document for Dungeoneer's Pack. Although, when you put this in here, it doesn't actually provide anything other than the description, Dungeoneer's Pack. Which, if you know what all's in the Dungeoneer's Pack, that's great. But when you're playing the game, are you going to remember everything that's in the Dungeoneer's Pack? Probably not. So what we're going to do instead is go with the description and bring all those items specifically in here. If I were going with a samurai, would I go with a bow? Is that what you're saying? Or no long bow? But I feel the same no long bow. Yeah, I have a dwarven samurai. Dwarven, it's a great build. Let me just tell you right now. First off, dwarven samurai barbarian, and no, missile weapons are not a part of his, repertoire. So let's go with the backpack for the Dungeoneer's pack because that's the first thing on it. Crowbar, hammer, pitons. So we're gonna go with crowbar. Throw that on there. A hammer, not a war hammer. This is just a regular hammer. Like as in, please hammer, don't hurt them. There it is. And then, yeah, it's not an MC hammer either, really. And then pitons. And there are 10 of them, so we change that to 10. Slowly building a samurai on Sundays. Well, why are you... Oh, so you mean you're slowly leveling a samurai on Sundays. By playing on Sundays, you're slowly getting him or her or whatever up in level. The character's built, they're just advancing is what you're saying, right? If I'm reading that correctly, if I'm understanding your point. Okay. I was wondering. I was like, why are you taking so long to build it? I mean, it's not that complicated. Just crack open the book, just do your thing. I mean, no, I just slowly. I pick one or two pieces of equipment each Sunday, and eventually, the character's done. So I figure eventually I'll get there. Okay. 10 pitons. What else is in the Dungeoneer's pack? 10 torches, a tinderbox, 10 days rations, and a water skin. So let's go on to torches. Oh, torch, tinderbox, rations, and water skin. We'll knock those out real quick. Boom, and then it was tinderbox, 10 torches, 10 days rations, and I believe there's 50 feet of hempen rope too. There is 50 feet of hempen rope as well, so let's race back up here to H. Get that hempen rope and make it 50 feet. And we call that a day. We're done with that part. I do know what you meant now. I had to figure it out. That's all. Because at first, that's not the way it read. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna go aside. Completely removed from this. Complete digression to something. Just because I was reading chat there and I read I have been slowly building a samurai on Sundays at first as, why is it taking you so long to build the character? You've built characters before. So again, just because you can read things differently, of course, than what is intended, I want to go and point out something that just cracked me up. I don't know why. It just cracked me up the other day, a couple of days ago when I was reading this, and it was in the background for Outlander. All right, Outlander background starts on page 136 of the player's handbook, and on page 137 are the charts for the personality trait, the ideal, the bond, and the flaw. One of the options under personality trait, option number 3 for personality trait, and this reminds me of one of those great memes, that I loved way back in the day. It said something about punctuation saves lives. The whole difference between let's eat, comma, grandma, and let's eat grandma, right? So punctuation saves lives, right? This says, number 3 on the personality trait for Outlander on that chart says, I once ran 25 miles without stopping to warn my clan of an approaching orc horde. I'd do it again if I had to. I think it would be better suited for its meaning if there was a comma after miles and another comma after stopping. For it to say, I once ran 25 miles, comma, without stopping, comma, to warn my clan of an approaching orc horde. I'd do it again if I had to. Because the way it reads now, I read it the other day as, I once ran 25 miles without stopping to warn my clan of an approaching orc horde. I'd do it again if I had to. So I saw that as a big problem. I was like, I don't think that's the intended personality trait. You know, screw my clan. I wasn't going to tell them about the orc horde. I kept running. I was like, yeah, that's not good. That's just a couple of commas would have saved that whole clan's life, you know, but no. So, nevertheless, that's a digression. I take that aside. As far as our sword and board human fighter is concerned, though, for tonight, for this pre-generated character, this one is pretty much done. So, as I stated in the beginning of this, I know it says human male. The gender is not a factor really in this. I'm only doing that so that I don't have to make a human male and a human female separately, because they're going to have the same statistics. So I've just created one character right now, and what I do is I close it. It is saved. I reopen it, whatever. I edit it. I duplicate it. I close it again, and then because of it, there is a copy down at the bottom, and I can take that one. It has I can just get rid of the copy of part that's in the beginning and change that M to FEM, and now we have a female, exact same statistics and everything. The character sheet is the exact same. It's all done. The only thing that they're missing is their images and their tokens. So I do have already images and tokens for these. This is what, human or fighter 2 human male and female. So for fighter 2 human female, I'm throwing in that one when it loads. Boop. And for fighter 2 human male, I'm throwing in that one. Boop. There we go. And then we'll already have the tokens, of course, in place of that as well. So fighter... Do we have the tokens? We may not have the tokens. What? How have I not done the tokens for this yet? Well, it'll only take a second. I'll knock those out real quick, and then I will be throwing them on here. Da-da-da-da-da. Fighter 1, or Fighter 2, excuse me. Human male is save as and done. And Fighter 2 human female is save as and done. So because of that, I know that doesn't show up on the stream, but because of that, I will now bring in Fighter 2. It's loading right now. I don't know if that shows on the screen or not. And then Fighter 2 male as well. Boom. I will set them up, set up the tokens later on. I'm just getting them in there first. This one is the default token for the male. He is done. Done. I can then get rid of that. And then that one's the default token for the female. And we are now done with both of those. I can now bring the female up here. You see it, yes. And then we can add the subfolder for fighter 2 human. Male and female will go in there because they have the exact same statistics. I'll move that below fighter 1 and put get in there. And there you go. And they are complete. Now we have fighter 2 done. So far I have Barbarian 1, which is human. I have both a male and a female version. I have Barbarian 2, which is a dwarf, male and female version. Oops. What happened there? Oh. Oh, hold on a second. There you go. I meant to close that instead. I accidentally moved it. Alright, and then for clerics, I have dwarf, male and female cleric with the same stats, and human, male and female cleric with the same stats. I have great axe fighter, male and female. And then I now have the sword and shield fighter, human fighter. I'm going to do a axe and shield dwarf, male and female. I will probably do like a rapier and shield, maybe, or debated about polearm, maybe, something like that for an elf. Maybe just a spear and shield. You never see spears either, despite how outrageously common they were, of course, in Middle Ages. Nobody uses a spear because they're not that effective of a weapon in D&D. And then halfling male will probably be. I was thinking about doing something a little different for him, like a scimitar and shield, or something of that nature, perhaps. And then Fighter 6 and Fighter 7 will be ranged. Fighter 6 already is a bow fighter, male and female, and then Fighter 7 will be an elven version instead of Fighter 6 is a human. Fighter 7 will be an elven version. I'm not having rangers in this because I'm trying to keep it pretty simple as far as kind of a tutorial perspective. I don't want people to get bogged down in character abilities and things like that, and trying to create the best kind of character. I just want them to learn to play the game, and get a feel for the game, get a little bit of a thrill out of the game, and then have that be the impetus for them to want to get more into the game. And then rogues, I have a male and female halfling rogue already. I'm going to have a male and female elf rogue and a male and female human rogue as options. And then there are 2 wizards also, 2 sets of wizards, male and female, of course. An elven set and a human set. They are already completed as well. And those ones, the ones that have these little blue silhouettes are the only ones that I still have to do. All the others are done. So I'm looking forward to finishing up these pre-generated characters and having some fun introducing family members first off to the game. Some of them, like I have one brother who does play, and then another brother who has seen it, but he's never really played. And then their kids are young, and they are both interested in having their kids learn to play. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and then I'm looking forward to, hopefully, if that goes well, and things like this stream go well, then I intend to make it kind of a tutorial situation on Roll20, where I can introduce some people to some basic, simple concepts of the game and how it works, and like I said, get them a little bit of a place where they can cut their teeth on it, and they can learn the basics and get some excitement about getting more into the hobby. It's definitely a good hobby, especially now with how much telecommuting everybody is doing and everything, telecorresponding and whatnot. So it makes it pretty cool, and with how much, depending on where you're at, some people are still locked down, lots of quarantine. So you need to do something to keep yourself from going nuts. But anyway, for the meantime, I'm just going to do the one character tonight. I'll work on a couple of those before I stream again. I'll probably stream another one over the next couple of days, maybe even 2 over the next couple of days, whereas we put together a couple more of these pre-generated characters. I already have all the images picked out and put aside in folders and stuff for all the characters, so I look forward to putting them all together and having myself a little bank, a little library of pre-generated characters that I can use for people to learn the game with. You know, hopefully it'll all go well, and I appreciate coming along with me for the ride tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and log off of this and probably get on and do something else in just a little while. You know, so thanks again, and thanks for showing up again and chatting in the window there. Always good to see everybody. So I appreciate it, and we will talk to you later then.